Hey there, fellow van builders. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jason, the van teacher. In today's video, we're covering how to use 80/20 aluminum in your van for building cabinets, your kitchen galley, or anything else you would traditionally frame with wood. This video will cover planning and designing with aluminum, the materials you will need, how to assemble all of the parts, how to install door hardware, slides, and hinges, and how to cover the cabinets with wood or other materials. At the end of the video, I will share my thoughts on using aluminum versus wood, whether I would do it again, and some of the mistakes I made and what you can do to avoid them. Let's get right to it. So what exactly is 80/20? Well, T-slot aluminum extrusion is made by many different companies and is sold under different brand names. It comes in a wide variety of sizes and profiles. Most common is 1 inch by 1 inch and 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. These two sizes are also known as 10 series and 15 series. It is also sold in metric sizes, although less commonly used. You can find extruded aluminum slotted on all four sides or down to just slotted on one side only. It can also come in different thicknesses and is sold as light or standard versions. Anodized aluminum is the most common finish, but you can also get it in different anodized colors or even powder coated. The term 80/20 is often used to describe extruded aluminum, but it is actually the name of a company that sells the product. You'll hear me throughout the video refer to extruded aluminum as 80/20 out of habit. Part 1. Planning and Design. This was the most difficult and time-consuming part of the entire process. Since all of my experience was with wood framing and wood finishing, I had to learn quite a bit before I could begin construction. First off was designing using a few different computer programs. I primarily used SketchUp to design and plan my cabinets. I started with a few basic designs that I had found online and edited them to fit my required dimensions and needs. I changed things like the number of drawers, cabinet height and width, and added or removed sections as needed. After several hours of computer design work, I ended up with a basic blueprint of my cabinets and kitchen galley that would be good enough for ordering the right amount of material. Since aluminum is very expensive, I wanted to make sure I was not wasting material, and to help with that, I used Cut Optimizer online software to minimize waste and produced accurate cut sheets. I highly recommend this program as it will save you time and money. I also used it to perfectly lay out dozens of pieces of bamboo plywood so that I would not end up wasting money on extra sheets I did not need. To use the software, you simply enter each part and its dimensions, and the program will provide you with a cut sheet showing you which pieces to cut out of each piece of stock material. Once I had my cabinets laid out, I could begin planning how I would assemble the parts and what kind of hardware and fasteners I would need. For most connections, I would need corner brackets, T-nuts, and bolts. I used mostly 5/16 inch bolts and either 1/2 or 3/4 inch long. Some of the T-nuts were the type you could drop in afterwards, as opposed to the type that slides in before the connection is made. I also went through the process of trying to decide whether to save money and make my own corner brackets or buy everything from the factory. It turned out, rather predictably, that the corner brackets I made and the bolts and nuts I bought from the local hardware store simply did not meet the high standards of precision necessary for 80/20 construction. My advice would be to only use factory-made parts and compatible hardware, and then simply budget in their higher cost. The cost of these parts, however, was not insignificant. In fact, plan to spend as much, if not more, on the connecting hardware than you will spend on the 80/20 material. Assembly and attaching the aluminum to the van. Let's start with the kitchen galley. I was able to lay out all of the parts and assemble the entire galley outside the van. Once I figured out how to connect the parts together, assembly only took a couple of hours. I did quickly find out that you must insert all of the T-nuts before connecting the parts. You simply won't be able to slide them in after the fact. No matter how carefully I planned, I still had to disassemble many sections to insert those nuts. Once I had the galley assembled, I set it in place and began working on attaching it to the van. I located several places where the galley touched the van frame and marked these locations so that I could insert rivet nuts. Once all of the rivet nuts were in place, I secured the galley to the van with 1/4-inch bolts, and I also used number 10 wood screws to anchor the galley to the floor. In all, the kitchen galley was bolted to the van frame in 10 different locations and then screwed to the floor and the garage wall in 12 different locations. A quick tip when attaching the aluminum to the van frame is to use a piece of closed cell foam anywhere the aluminum is in contact with the van. This will help with thermal heat transfer, but you should still expect conductive heat transfer at these points, often referred to as thermal bridges. The rest of the cabinets were installed in place. I started by attaching the aluminum pieces to the van with as many rivet nuts and bolts as I could. Anywhere the cabinet would touch the frame, I would secure that point with a 1/4-inch bolt. These connections are strong enough to do pull-ups from, and may even help increase the overall strength of the van's frame. As you can see on the underside of the cabinets, I did install a few sections of panel boards. This required careful measuring and planning. I wanted the panels to be tight and not rattle, and to have a clean and finished look. I used the same materials and method I used for the wall and ceiling panels, Marathon tweed fabric, and Landau foam adhered to 1/4-inch plywood. I simply inserted this into the aluminum channel slots. Cabinet hardware and drawer slides. Installing drawer slides was very simple using T-nuts and bolts. I did have to slightly modify some of the openings on the drawer slide to accommodate the larger bolt heads. But other than that, the installation was similar to wood cabinet installation. Again, don't forget to install the T-nuts for the slides before assembling the cabinets. For door hinges, I used self-tapping metal screws and screwed them directly into the aluminum. I don't think this is the most secure method since aluminum is a little bit soft, but it does seem to be holding well after 1 year and none of the screws have worked their way loose. I was very careful not to over-tighten, but if in the future screws work loose, I will simply replace them with the next larger screw size. If eventually I need to rework the hinges, I will use bolts and go through the 80/20 frame. The last piece of hardware I attached to the aluminum were drawer catches. Again, I used self-tapping metal screws and was careful not to over-tighten them. Next up is attaching wood cover panels. I decided to use bamboo plywood to finish my cabinets. I carefully measured and cut each panel or door, sanded and polyurethaned each piece before attaching them to the cabinets. I used 1-inch long stainless steel 5/16 inch bolts to attach the panels carefully measuring the holes to line up with the pre-installed T-nuts. For these T-nuts, I used the spring-loaded variety that stay in position while you are trying to line up the bolt through the wood panel. The cabinet doors were installed just like any other cabinet door, nothing different about using aluminum compared to wood. Finishing touches. My favorite finishing touch is installing LED strip lights in the open channel underneath the cabinets. Strip lighting is very inexpensive and easy to install. Put them on a dimmer switch and they make a nice beam of soft light. Another finishing touch is adding D-ring anchor points for hanging things or securing tie-down straps. And now for some final thoughts. After a year in the van, I decided to convert the dinette seating to a love seat with storage. It turned out to be very easy to add and modify the existing 80/20 structure to convert it into a love seat. I was able to use a few scrap pieces to change the layout. I think this would have been a little more work if it had been built with wood framing. I also have not noticed any of the bolts coming loose, and all of the cabinets are just as strong and rigid as they were when I installed them over a year ago. I do plan to redo the roof rack this summer. The cross pieces need to be cut shorter by a few 1/16ths of an inch to allow the rack to come together tighter at the corners. I also want to change all the bolts over to stainless steel to prevent corrosion. The black coated bolts that I used have already started to show some surface corrosion. If you would like to learn more about van conversions, check out my videos on electrical systems, including installing solar power, DC to DC chargers, shore power, and choosing the right wire size. If you would like to know how much we spent on our van, check out my video on how much our 2023 Ram ProMaster cost to build. Also, check out the links in the description below for more information on any of the products mentioned in this video. And if you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.